gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 306. Woo. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard Chris Saturn.
As always.
As always, and forever, for as long as we live, we will be doing this in 50 years. When we're both basically dead, we're going to be talking about Rygar.
Yeah. You remember Rygar? Nope. That was a good show.
All right, good night. I don't know why it excites me, the idea of us doing this show until we're old and gray.
Yeah.
But it does. So there you go.
You never know.
We don't really have any housekeeping this week, except to say there are other shows you can go listen to. And I mean, of course, there are shows.
Thousands.
There are other shows exist. Goodbye. There are other shows related to our endeavors that you can go listen to.
True.
Board Game Barbarians and Cinema Rogues being the names of those shows. But you can also listen to other shows as long as you listen to ours first, and then you go do whatever you want after that. I don't care. But this is our time. Our time.
I'm glad
is
you
now.
gave them permission.
So, my week. I've been playing more Forza, playing a little more Yakuza. They're just my evergreen titles right now.
Nice.
I hit a point in Yakuza where I had to grind 300 million yen.
Holy shit.
Just three, not 300, just 3 million yen. And I did it all through the business management mini game, which it's so good. Oh, it's just great. And so still doing that, still playing Forza. It's still fun. I'm still collecting little muscle figures. Did I talk about this on the show last time?
You mentioned the muscle figures because we had a conversation about muscle. But you had not gotten so balls deep in muscle yet at that point.
I've got that's a weird phrase. I've got many muscle figures now. I got all the Capcom ones. The Mega Man ones are shit. The Street Fighter ones are very good.
Yeah.
I have Alien ones. I got some Street Sharks ones. I got some old vintage muscle. I've got 2 big lunch boxes full of muscle toys now. I've got all the He-Man muscles like that they made. And I've got like a little muscle Castle Grayskull. I've got a little muscle Ripley in the Power Loader and a little muscle Alien Queen. They make muscles for everything now.
Nice.
So yeah, just buying toys. Also, we were talking in the Discord about basically original hardware, which comes up frequently, and my stance is pretty much like just emulate. Honestly, if you have a computer or a device that can, then save yourself a lot of money and headache and effort.
A weird shift from when we first started this show 6 years ago.
It really is.
You were pretty strong on original hardware then.
I was. Now, I didn't have any problem with emulation, but and I still like original hardware, but at this price, no.
Yeah, it's not worth it anymore.
It's not but we were, and I got to talking like, yeah, my NES and my SNES have been in a box for a couple years now, and then we got to talking about VHS tapes, and for whatever reason I got a wild hair, and I still have a 13-inch CRT floating around my house with a VCR built into it,
of course,
and I put it on my desk next to my computer, and I hooked my Nintendo up to it.
Yeah.
And I've been playing NES on my CRT for the last week or so.
Nice.
How's it feel? I immediately it feels fine. I was like, I was having this like moment, this big, I was trying to have some kind of reckoning, like, is it really better?
Yeah.
And so I'd play a game on there for a while, and then I would jump to RetroArch on my computer right next to it, and then play for a while. And I was playing a game with a password feature, so I could use my password to move back and forth.
Right.
And it feels the same to me, honestly.
Yeah, that's where I've been for 20 years.
And I'm like, it's nice playing on a CRT.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool putting the cartridge in and being on a little old TV. Like, it's neat, but it's not better. And then immediately I started noticing that my CRT has some weird geometry issues for stuff like side-scrolling games. Yeah. So you kind of notice it in the upper edges where it gets a little weird and warped. Yeah. And
a lot of TVs were like that at the time, though.
Yeah, I would say most TVs were like that.
Yeah, you just had
and
to
it
get
only
used
got
to it.
worse. It only got worse with later flat front CRTs, which notoriously have bad geometry.
Yeah.
So it was just this, and then immediately I felt that itch of like, well, I wish the geometry was better.
Oh no.
Well, maybe I could look up the service manual And then I'm like looking up the service manual for this like shitty like $50 CRT, you know. And then I'm like, well, what if I did want to get a CRT, like another one with like good geometry? And I went on eBay because I was like, what? How insane is it right now? So I go on eBay, I go on some Facebook groups, I go on Facebook Marketplace to see what PVMs and just regular, not even professional CRTs, but just consumer sets look like right now. And I immediately went, not even going to do it. Not even going to bother looking. It was so expensive.
You know, if you really just decide you absolutely have to have a CRT again, you can just rebuy the PVM you sold to me for the same price you sold it to me.
I can, but that's a big old 19-inch, and I never used it because I had nowhere to put the damn thing. That one that I sold to you is a big ass cube.
It feels tiny compared to all the CRTs I had then, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sitting here playing a 13-inch, which is kind of that's my preferred size. That's what I like.
Weird.
Yeah, honestly, I would if I took that, if I bought that CRT back from you for what I sold it to you for 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I sold it on the open market, I could then go buy 2 13-inch CRTs that are both PVMs and then probably still have money left over.
That's insane.
Like, it is nuts right now. Ugh. And it just hammered home, like, my recommendation of, hey, if you just like original hardware, you can afford it, and it's just fun. That's just what you like. Then yes, do it. Absolutely. Right. If you can afford something and it brings you joy, go for it.
Definitely.
But if you're like, hey, I want to experience classic games, that's my number one priority, man, prices are so high. It's so high right now.
Right.
But all this to say, I've been playing on my NES, and it's fun. I like the NES, and I like emulation, and I've been watching VHS tapes, which for some reason does have some magical quality for me, and I can't tell you what it is. But I've been watching a bunch of Arnold Schwarzenegger movies on VHS. I've gotten through Conan the Barbarian, Terminator. I watched Total Recall today. Just it feels good.
Very nice.
It's good. Anyway, that's all I've been up to.
So I am back in Dragon Quest Builders 2 again.
Oh my god!
Because it released
because it's on Game Pass. Yeah.
Yes, it's on Game Pass. So I needed a little bit of a palate cleanser after playing 5 straight Yakuza games with nothing in between. I needed something that was a little less a hardcore insane crime drama. Yeah. And so it's nice, it's peaceful, it's pleasant, it's lighthearted, it's a nice little palate cleanser, and also it's something that I can play on my PC while I am still playing Yakuza on my Xbox. So I went through the whole first segment of Builders 2 just to give myself a break, and then I went right back in with Yakuza 0, which is the prequel. And you
just came up, gasped for air, and then dove right back down.
Exactly. So it's neat seeing Kamurocho in the before times. Mm-hmm. And it's hilarious to see younger Kiryu when he has not yet decided who he is as a person. And he still thinks he's going to be just Yakuza badass for the rest of his life. So it's been neat, and I appreciate the little references and nods to the other games in the series. It also has just a ludicrous amount of side quests and side content. I am still in the middle, near the beginning of chapter 2, so at the very, very, very beginning of the story, and I've wasted nearly 20 hours on side quests and sub-stories.
Oh my gosh.
Mostly on Pocket Circuit, the little slot cars. But
I've not played Pocket Circuit in any of the Yakuza games I've played because it seemed tremendously boring.
Well, I think it's only in 0 and 1.
Okay.
So
I remember seeing it in
Kiwami,
1.
Rather.
I feel like I remember seeing it in 0, but I didn't play much of 0 before I quit. But I didn't give it the time of day.
Yeah, it's
that or the card game with the beetle.
Oh, I hated that. I hated that so much. Oh, it was so bad.
That seemed a little skeevy.
Fortunately, that one has only been in that one game.
Okay. Good.
In this one, Pocket Circuit is back and it feels like Kiwami just reused Yakuza 0's Pocket Circuit and just aged up Kiryu in it. And what's great is in Yakuza Kiwami, when they reference it, Kiryu saying, "Oh, I remember when I was younger and I came here and we raced with the kids and you were there." And I assumed reading that Kiryu was talking about his childhood.
When he was a child.
When he spent his childhood playing slot cars with the other kids. And this guy was there to commentate on it. And then when I'm playing Yakuza 0, he meant, like 15 years ago when I was in my 20s playing slot cars with little children and you were there.
Yes. Yes.
So I appreciate that. I will say, however, that while the rhythm mini games and most of the Yakuza games are a little meh, like the karaoke has always been kind of phoned in, but they make up for it by dumb animations that are hilarious.
Right.
And in Yakuza 5, there was a mini game where like a whole segment of the game was about raising up a pop idol to become a pop idol. So there was a lot of rhythm games there, and they were fine. They were passable. For a rhythm game that is not in a rhythm game, it was all right. The dancing rhythm game in Yakuza 0 is straight up bullshit, and it can go to hell and die.
You were in the Discord and you were getting so mad.
Oh, I'm so mad about it still. I finally finished it and I'm still angry about it. Oh, what dumb RNG bullshit. And it's just, its timing is awful. I hate it. Whoever designed that can go to hell. The rest of the game's been great though. Highly recommended. Just don't play the disco.
There you go. Let's knock some news out. First up, Yakuza directors have confirmed that future titles in the series will be turn-based RPGs, with the series' traditional brawler combat moving to sister series Judgment, which is getting a sequel in September. I don't know why. I thought Judgment was more combat light, or are they just saying that the next Judgment and forward will be
I'm guessing that they are saying the continuing games in the series. I have not yet played Judgment. It is still on my slate. But I have heard that it is similar gameplay, but with detective stuff to the older Yakuzas. So,
I read about it and I looked at it and it did not interest me. I'd rather them bring Fist of the North Star to Xbox and play it. But it makes sense. Even you were saying just last episode that like they were running the gamut for Kiryu and the brawler gameplay and what Yakuza has been for these previous 7 entries in really more if you count the ones that didn't come over here and if you include Judgment and Fist of the North Star and I mean they've got to be pushing 10 games in this like brawler engine style, which has obviously evolved greatly over the years.
Absolutely.
So it makes sense that they would break away and say, "Hey, let's take a different direction with it, especially with as successful as Yakuza 7 has been."
And it definitely makes sense because the series has always kind of had some JRPG elements.
Yeah, it seemed like it always kind of wanted to be there.
Yeah, it feels like a JRPG where the random battles are all brawler and the dungeons are all brawler, but everything else is basically just a JRPG.
Yeah.
So it makes sense they just eventually decided, well, let's just cave in and do turn-based combat.
I do like the idea that they're just splitting it. They're saying, we'll keep doing both.
Yeah.
But the JRPG one sold the best, so it keeps the main series and the Brawler gets bumped to, the Judgment sub-series, which was very well received. Judgment was very well received game. So
yeah, and if they're going to shift genres that sharply, which again I don't think is that sharp with this specific series. But if they are going to change genres, I appreciate they're still giving the other option for people who were specifically only fans of that and don't like turn-based games. They can still at least play something within this world.
I will say that this news has made me want to go play Judgment because I'm enjoying Like a Dragon. I'm on record as saying I've been enjoying Like a Dragon a lot. Yeah. I'm not a huge JRPG guy, and I'll probably put in... I might have a couple of Yakuza JRPGs in me, but then I'm going to want to punch things. So it has given me interest in Judgment that I didn't have previously.
Yeah, I picked up the Series X port of Judgment, so I'll be getting to that eventually.
All I want to know is if it's slow. If it's slow, I don't know.
I'll let you know when I get there.
But we'll see. Former Retro Studios lead says that the Switch port of Metroid Prime Trilogy is, quote, very unlikely due to, quote, Herculean effort required to convert Metroid Prime 3 to use traditional controls or gyro controls.
Yeah, he shot that down pretty hard. He said the effort that it would take to reprogram that game to not work with specifically a Wii remote or mouse would be incredibly difficult.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Give us the first two games then.
Right.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
You're not going to give us the fourth one? Nintendo! God! Gamescom is joining E3 and going all digital. Shocking. Nobody.
Yeah, no real surprise there.
.emu will be releasing Zombies Ate My Neighbors and Ghoul Patrol in a 2-pack on the Switch eShop on June 29th.
A lot of people very excited by that one.
People are very stoked, and I'm very happy for them. I'm not a huge Zombies Ate My Neighbors fan myself.
It's not my thing either. I always feel bad about that because the people that I know that love those games are incredibly passionate about it. And I want to share their passion, and I'm very happy for them. But every time I've tried to play the game, I'm like, nope, not for me.
I like the game. It's just like there's something like 70 levels, and I'm like, it's that Gauntlet syndrome where you don't ever beat Gauntlet. Right. You just decide you're done playing Gauntlet.
That is true. Yes.
You just play it until you're like, I'm gonna stop now.
Unless it's like Legends or Dark Legacy, those you can
which actually have a reasonable length. But yeah. Now, I'm excited for it. Have they said if they're gonna add any online or anything? Or?
I don't believe so. I think so far it looks like it's just going to be a straight up emulation.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for it. I'm excited it's going to be available. It's a series that people have long wanted, and I'm glad to see it getting some love.
I was curious if they were going to edit out the Konami and LucasArts logos from the original to replace with Disney and Lucasfilm Games logos.
That would take effort, though.
Well, I went back to the Virtual Console release because some Virtual Console games had mild edits like that. Yeah. And so I procured the Virtual Console copy just so I could look at it, and they edited nothing at all. LucasArts just left the Konami logo in there. They did not care. So I'm curious what effort .emu will take, because .emu has taken that kind of effort in things before.
Oh, yeah. Have they stated a price for this pack of 2 ROMs?
Oh, I don't remember. I want to say I saw a price somewhere between $20 and $30, but I don't know definitively.
I'm sorry, $20 or $30 for 2 ROMs?
Hey, there's a Disney tax involved.
Oh, Christ. No, thank you. Wow. I was thinking like
I could be wrong, but I want to say I saw a price in that range.
Like if they add online or something, okay, yeah, that'd be, I don't know. An online connection for Tetris on the original Game Boy has been created using a Pi Pico and some custom hardware. This is bizarre and weird.
My apologies, it is 15.
Okay, 15's good. I like it at 15. I think that's a good price.
And it looks like it's also going to be on
my objections back.
Looks like it'll also be on PC in addition to Switch.
Well, it's already on PC because I have RetroArch. So.
And potentially other platforms, but those that I know of.
Yeah. So yeah, you can play Tetris on your original Game Boy over the internet now.
Yeah, with other people who also have this custom hardware set up.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Apple is rumored to be working on a Switch-like hybrid device that is probably most definitely fake. I don't believe this rumor for one solitary second. Next, you're going to tell me it's called the Pippin Portable. Like, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Although, to be fair, the next rumor that the last rumor I full on shot down was the Turbo Mini.
That's true.
So, I don't know. I don't have a good track record here.
Yeah, I can't stop hearing people talking about the supposed Apple Car, like every
the Apple Car, the Apple Television, I
don't know if it's just that Apple's R&D keeps leaking things that they have considered and won't actually make, or if these things are actually in consideration, or if it's just rampant speculation. So
I assume when you have Apple money and you are an Apple level operation,
right,
you make prototypes and designs for literally every type of everything under the sun.
Right.
Why wouldn't you? Because the second something becomes a profitable idea, you already got a prototype.
Yeah. I mean,
when you're talking the amount of money they have, like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't they have a game console design kind of in the early workings in case that became something they wanted to do?
Call it the iGame.
Well, yeah, gosh. Yeah, they probably would, wouldn't they?
They would. Or no, they'll call it the iPlay.
I'm still a little upset that the name iPad has been normalized, because let me tell you, when iPad was announced, everyone thought it was dumb.
Yeah.
Apple is rumored, never mind, just read that. Bizarre and ominous Easter egg has been discovered in Treasure's Genesis game, McDonald's Treasureland Adventure.
Did you look at this?
No.
Oh, man, it's so weird. So you put in a password, but it's not just like a regular password. You have to like back up and re-enter something or something. There's some weird steps involved.
Combination of movements.
Yeah, and then it'll tell you your password is wrong, and then you keep hitting buttons for a little while. And then the McDonald's logo, because on the password screen, it shows like the golden arches, like the sign from outside of a McDonald's up in the air on a signpost. And suddenly it turns into polygons. And you can rotate it while it plays this really eerie electronic tone, like from a 70s alien movie.
That's weird.
And if you keep hitting the button, the McDonald's pillar sign turns into a box, and then a Treasure logo, and then a Sega logo, and you can just keep rotating it and playing with it, and it turns back into itself, and it just keeps at that until the console resets itself.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Why?
Treasure.
Wow.
Just really weird.
In a recent interview, Sega's Shuji Utsumi told Famitsu that Yakuza 7 was the most successful title in franchise history, and that they're going to work to make the series a global brand. Will look into remastering and remaking older games and localizing previously Japan-exclusive games, which is extremely exciting news for Yakuza fans.
Yeah.
Of which we have both become in the last 6 months.
Yeah,
inexplicably. Also stated that Atlas Games will globally expand, seeing simultaneous worldwide release dates.
That's a huge one for Atlas fans.
Yes.
And they also said the same thing about the Yakuza games too, doing worldwide release dates, which that's crazy for some of those Japanese franchises.
Oh yeah, so especially something as dense and very Japanese as Yakuza. Like I can't even imagine that. Yeah. Also may be working on reboots for Jet Set Radio and Crazy Taxi, according to some rumors. Yeah. And also said that they're mostly okay with Sonic fan games as long as they don't turn a profit, as if they could have stopped it.
Well, that wasn't a rumor. That was part of that interview. He said that they may be working on reboots of Jet Set and Crazy Taxi. Basically, they are pitching ideas at this point. They don't want to commit to anything, but it is something they are tossing around.
Yeah, well, I'm all for it. I'm excited for new Sega. More new Sega, please.
Seriously.
Original Xbox dashboard available as a live wallpaper for Xbox insiders. I downloaded this. Yeah. It's not really the original dashboard. It's just the background from the original dashboard, which it's very cool and nostalgic for me because I love that original dashboard.
The weird glowing goo.
I was hoping for more of a transformational type theme.
They're not doing that. Because if they did that, then they'd have to find somewhere to squeeze the ads in, and they're not going to put in that much effort.
Right. But yeah, I like it. It's cute. I turned it on. It made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Nice.
Koei Tecmo has announced a new Fatal Frame pachinko machine. Oh, man. How exciting for all the Fatal Frame fans. I know our editor Pablo is a Fatal Frame fan. So I know you like the franchise as well. Are you going to play the pachinko or?
It's on my list right after the Silent Hill pachinko, right after I pull the lever.
So you got on your list, it's like Yakuza 6 and 7, buy entire pachinko machine, play pachinko machine.
Yeah. It's like 100,000 games down on my list as I'm going to play Silent Hill pachinko, Castlevania sexy pachinko, and then Fatal Frame pachinko. They're down there. I'll get to it.
Perfect. It's right after Ball in a Cup.
Yeah, right after Ball in a Cup.
Square Enix has announced the 35th anniversary live stream celebrating the Dragon Quest franchise will be May 26th and will feature simultaneous localization into English and other languages for the first time. This is exciting news.
I'm so stoked.
But to be fair, Square Enix is also really bad at Dragon Quest live streams.
Yeah, it's going to be hilarious.
So for any newer DQ fans that have maybe jumped on since DQ11, just know that there's an equal chance of them completely fucking this up beyond all belief.
Let's also not forget that last Final Fantasy 15 live stream they did, where they were celebrating the game's anniversary or whatever, they came out and immediately said they were canceling DLC for it. So this is Square Enix. Keep your expectations low. They did say they will be announcing the future of the franchise, including upcoming titles. So I am stoked to see what we see. I am hoping, so probably Pachinko. Let's never discount that.
Really, more than a new Dragon Quest, although I do want a new Dragon Quest, I want the DS and 3DS games available somewhere. I really want that.
Yeah, I would love to see I want to see I want to see all of the games released on modern consoles. So all the older Dragon Quest games would be great. I don't expect that, but it'd be nice. But I would like to see the older Dragon Quest Monsters games ported to something where they can be played instead of just on DS and 3DS. So I would like to see that.
I would love to see like Rocket Slime collection.
That'd be.
And you know what frustrates me the most about it is that the Switch with a flip grip. You could turn the screen and do both DS screens, and it's still a touch screen. It would be so perfect. Nintendo would never do it.
Nope, never ever.
Or Square Enix would never do it. No one would ever do it.
No.
But man, wouldn't it be perfect? It's the perfect DS emulation device.
The thing is, Nintendo didn't officially authorize the flip grip, so they absolutely wouldn't authorize somebody releasing a game that intended you to play it that way.
They need to.
I know.
Because the flip grip is great.
Because
a game I forgot to mention I got was Raiden 4 Cross Mikado. It's a game center in Japan. It's just Raiden 4 with a remix soundtrack. I've been playing that with my flip grip, and it's a blast.
Nice.
Tubbs has revealed several new Sega rubber ducks, including ducks themed after Shenmue, Jet Set Radio, and Yakuza. Previous ducks in their line have been based on multiple media franchises, including Fallout, Skyrim, Resident Evil, Metal Gear, Street Fighter, etc. Saturn writes the news. He's very excited about these ducks.
Oh my god, I love this duck. There's a little Kiryu duck, and he's holding a little bicycle. It's the most adorable fucking thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh man,
I love it.
I was not even aware of Tubbs ducks.
Me either.
Before.
I had never heard of it, but it's like 4 stories of it showed up on my news feed this morning, all with little pictures of Kiryu duck. And the first one I thought was just like somebody had photoshopped a duck and was making a joke, but then it just kept showing up, and I was like, what the fuck is going on with this goddamn duck? And so I finally clicked on it and saw it, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I need this.
Yeah. Konami's Getsu Fumadin reboot has released on early access on Steam. Switch release dates still tentatively next year.
And it's getting some pretty decent reviews for the early access too.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm hopefully it all pans out.
Right.
And then finally, Game Center CX announces they will now cover PS2, GBA, and GameCube games as the consoles are officially retro. So everyone that asks us in the Discord, what's officially retro? We go by the Game Center CX retro canon
apparently
list.
So it's if the console is at least 20 years old, that's retro now, according to them.
20 years, that's the limit. I'm excited. I actually just caught up on a lot of my Game Center CX recently, and just if you've not watched Game Center CX, oh, it's so good.
I cannot wait for him to do a Katamari Damacy episode.
Oh my gosh, it's great.
That would be
I've noticed
amazing.
as he gets older, as Arno ages, his hair keeps getting poofier, and it's slowly turning into like a poofy perm thing.
Nice.
Like every season of the show, it's just a little more poofy. Let's get into the.
I wish my hair would get more poofy as I got older instead of just running away.
Yeah, I don't know what his secret is. I have no idea. This week we were talking Gunpei Yokoi, who is the Wonder Swan guy, the mind behind the successful, well-remembered, beloved Wonder Swan.
Yeah, clearly that's the only thing he's ever been remembered for.
He did some other shit.
I don't know.
But mostly the Wonder Swan.
Yeah, just the Virtual Boy.
And if we're stretching the Virtual Boy, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's start with early life and a little bit of his work in toys.
Yes.
So most of this information here I took from Laura Krieger's article entitled Searching for Gunpei Yokoi on The Escapist, which is a great read. It has way more information than basically anything else on the internet about Gunpei Yokoi. I tried to vet their sources as best I could. because I kept getting so much conflicting information.
Yeah.
Wikipedia is just basically like, he was born and Game Boy. Like, that's all Wikipedia knows about him.
Yeah, I found a couple of Iwata Asks interviews. One of them was not originally released in English. That they had some secondhand interviews with people that were friends of his talking about him. So that also helped contribute to this.
So I did want to give a special thank you to Laura Krieger and their article "Searching for Gunpei Yokoi" on The Escapist, which you can go read, and you should go read because it's interesting. Because that's where most of my information that I found came from. Yokoi was born September 10th, 1941 in Kyoto, right in the height of World War II, to a pharmaceutical factory owner. What?
No, I'm just agreeing. That is right smack in the middle of World War II on the Pacific.
Right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And then nothing happened in his life, and then he graduated from Toshishi University with a degree in electronics. Straight from birth to degree.
Well, nothing happened in Japan between 1941 and him graduating.
I mean, what?
I can't think of anything.
There's nothing. I can find no real information about Yokoi before getting his degree. But after college, he got a job as an electrician maintaining Nintendo's Hanafuda card assembly line in 1965. Nice. He quickly gained a reputation at the factory as a, quote, electronics whiz who built toys and gadgets in his spare time.
Nice.
Now, Nintendo had been, at the time, struggling and would continue to struggle financially throughout most of the 60s. Hanafuda cards weren't selling, and they were looking to pivot into something more profitable to maintain the company. Now, this is in direct opposition. This next part of the story is in direct opposition to what Wikipedia claims happened. According to Wikipedia, Yokoi, in his free time at this factory, was a janitor, first of all. One wiki I found said he was a janitor that made this toy, and Hiroshi Yamauchi, the CEO of Nintendo at the time, just noticed this cool toy and was like, let's make this.
Right.
And it sounded like bullshit the first time I read it.
I also found a wiki that said that he pitched something to Yamauchi while driving him around, like he was Yamauchi's chauffeur.
You know when the janitor of your playing card factory drives the CEO of your company around and shows him his toys he made? So the information I chose to cite as truthful is the information from, again, Laura Krieger's article. And it says, quote, Yamauchi called Yokoi into his office one day and asked the engineer to develop anything for the Christmas rush. Gunpei produced an extending arm toy he'd constructed in his spare time, a wood lattice that could reach and grab when its handles were pushed together. Yamauchi was delighted, and Yokoi's toy, dubbed the Ultra Hand, was hustled to the market that year.
Nice.
So, he was not a janitor, and he was explicitly asked to make this, and I had also read that they were looking to get into the toy market. So this is just where they were. And Japan was also a huge producer of toys in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And it a very large amount of 80s toys came from Japan.
And a lot of Nintendo's toys from the 60s, 70s, 80s came to America, too. And presumably other countries. I can't speak to that, but my grandparents had a little tiny roulette wheel, and they always would pull it out for holidays just so we could, gamble, because that's what families do apparently. And it wasn't until I was in high school that I was looking at it and noticed there was a Nintendo logo on the bottom, and it was just a little Nintendo roulette wheel from either the 60s or 70s that they bought.
Yep. The Ultra Hand was an immediate success. Gunpei was tasked with creating a variety of toys for Nintendo. I have just a few of them listed that were from that same article. The Ultra Machine, which is an indoor baseball thrower, which I don't know quite what an indoor baseball thrower is, because technically I'm an indoor baseball thrower.
I assume it's for like batting cages, things like that.
I would assume that as well. Or maybe one that throws soft inside safe baseballs for children.
No,
I have no idea.
This was a different era. There was no such thing as safe.
10 Billion Barrel, which is a Rubik's Cube type puzzle toy. And then you have Nintendo's Love Tester, which was the first Nintendo product to use real electronic components. It was one of their first products sold outside of Japan.
Yep.
And then we have a quote here.
Yeah,
this is from, quote. I assume that Iwata asks.
Yeah.
From Yokoi, who says, quote, "The love tester came from me wondering if I could somehow use this to get girls to hold my hand. I wound up holding hands with quite a few girls thanks to it. Of course, somewhere along the line, I started to feel like I wanted to do more than just hold hands."
That is, of course, not him saying it directly, but someone else from Nintendo quoting that was a thing that he said.
Yeah. Then you have the beam gun, which is often cited as kind of the proto zapper,
right?
Which is a fun little indoor shooting toy. Eventually, Yokoi's continued success at Nintendo would coalesce into him leading his own team. He was in charge of the Research and Development 1 team, R&D 1 within Nintendo, which is a super duper famous, is Nintendo's R&D 1. It was their like main development powerhouse.
They've done some things.
And then that takes us straight into his time at Nintendo.
Yes. And the philosophy that he claims that he was led by was, quote, lateral thinking of withered technology, which has also been translated as lateral thinking of seasoned technology, depending on which translation of his works you're looking at. He coined that and spelled it out in his 1997 book, which was called Yokoi Gunpei Game House, which has actually been released in English, I believe, under a very different title. I think it was Gunpei Yokoi's House of Games or something like that. I don't remember, but similar enough. The gist of it is basically just use more mature technology, cheaper technology in creative or interesting ways rather than chasing the newest, most powerful, most expensive technologies. And that philosophy is apparent in most of his creations. And I would say it is apparent in most of Nintendo's creations over the last 30 years.
I would say that overall it is and continues to be a cornerstone of Nintendo's maybe not design choice, but company philosophy, something like that.
Like they've deviated. The N64 and GameCube were both pretty powerful for their time.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, I feel like they've mostly stayed true to that. And in one of the Iwata Asks that I read, he said that philosophy is important throughout Nintendo and was in fact a deciding factor when they were developing the DS and the Wii, which you can see that seems pretty obvious.
Oh, for sure. The DS and the Wii were both kind of hailed as being a little underpowered for what they were and for the time they came out.
Especially compared to like the PSP and the PS3, which were contemporary to both of them.
And a lot of people, when the Switch came out, obviously weren't paying attention when the Wii came out because it was the same arguments with the same media outlets running the same articles about like, hey, can this older, underpowered tech compete in this market?
Right.
It was the same story then.
Right. I don't know how they miss it every time.
It's almost like they just want my clicks.
But yeah, one of the first big things that came out of it was the Game & Watch, which, according to a widely shared anecdote that I can find no corroboration of, Yokoi came up with the idea of the Game & Watch after watching a businessman on a train playing with an LCD calculator out of boredom. And I've
also heard this anecdote and I've found no source for it either.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. I can't find the source. And that's where I found the related anecdote of him pitching it to Yamauchi while driving him to a business meeting as if he was the chauffeur now. And according to that same anecdote, Yamauchi was on the way to a meeting with Sharp Corporation for some other unrelated thing, and then mentioned that idea to Sharp, and they decided to work together on it. Now, Sharp did ultimately supply some of the electronics used in Game & Watch, but I don't know if that story holds any water at all. It could be just complete nonsense.
Fabrication.
Yes.
Right. I have noticed that the more I read stuff that ends up being anecdotal, the more the truth is usually like, hey, they came up with this because they thought collectively as a company it would be a good idea and they wanted to get into it and they decided to invest in that. And I do notice in general, just in the 306 times we've done this show, that A lot of Japanese developers seem to really want to have stories and anecdotes to go along with how certain things came up.
Right.
Or were invented.
And I wonder if that's more because with Famitsu specifically, Famitsu has been interviewing a lot of these developers and creators for much longer than Western magazines were interviewing developers and producers and creators. When you look at Western, even Western PC mags or old EGMs or whatever from the late 80s and early 90s, they rarely ever talked to the actual developers. They would talk to marketing people.
Right.
So
yeah, it's just a weird thing I've noticed is very much when you're looking at the development of Japanese hardware and games, there's a lot of like weird anecdotes that come up that you're like, did you really do it that way, or did you just sit in a boardroom and go, let's do this thing, and then someone went, yeah, put it into production? And like what was the one recently, the explanation of Sonic, how Sonic was developed? Like, he needs to be this color blue because in our hearts we can feel his bravery, or whatever the story was.
And he was a mix of, what was it, Bart Simpson and Michael Jackson or some other thing?
Yeah. And so I understand the desire to want to have an interesting story or anecdote attached to the production of something meaningful to a lot of people.
Right. But also it's interesting to know the reality of it.
Yeah, that isn't to say these aren't true, but I wonder about them.
I'm with you. But yeah, the more based on reality part of the Game & Watch is that it was built on cheap technology that was already being used by Sharp in wristwatches and calculators. And it was things that they could get in bulk and they could get for cheap. There was obviously no room for a joystick in the little tiny Game & Watch without it inevitably getting caught on something and ripped off. Right. So originally, the earlier Game & Watch units always used separate buttons for each direction. There would be a left button and a right button. And then in 1982, when they were making the Game & Watch based on Donkey Kong, he implemented what was at the time a unique control device, which is what we now know as the D-pad. It was the first ever D-pad used on any game or electronic device like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the first Game & Watch game was Ball, which was released in 1980. That's when they still had one-word titles available, and they didn't have to name everything Revengeance.
Right. Of course. Rising Revengeance.
Yes. And that was in 1980. The last official Game & Watch that was part of the original Game & Watch series was Mario the Juggler, which was
less names then. They couldn't just call it Juggler.
They couldn't call it Mario, and they couldn't call it Juggler. They had to call it Mario the Juggler. Very different than Mario the Gigolo. Different game.
That one's starring Rob Schneider.
Also different than Mario the Juggalo, which is when he got really into ICP.
God damn it.
But Mario the Juggler is just a remake of Ball, but with Mario as the character instead of the generic Game & Watch guy.
That's crazy.
There was a lot of reuse in Game & Watch.
But then eventually he makes actual video games. Right. Tell me about those.
Yeah, so he was appointed by Yamauchi to supervise on what would become Donkey Kong. He was put in charge of watching this new Miyamoto guy that they weren't 100% certain on yet. And I found an Iwata Asks interview with Miyamoto, and he says that Yokoi explained a lot of the intricacies of game design to him and was pivotal in getting the attention of Nintendo higher-ups on approving Donkey Kong as a project. So Miyamoto obviously had tons of respect for the guy. The two of them also would work together on Mario Brothers. Miyamoto credits Yokoi with the concept of there even being multiplayer gameplay in Mario Brothers, as well as giving Mario the ability to jump or fall from great heights without taking damage. Miyamoto phrased it as, Yokoi said, maybe Mario should have superpowers. And when he asked what superpowers he should have, he should say, maybe he can fall really far without getting hurt.
Also, I wish girls would hold my hand.
Real superpowers.
I've seen multiple references to of Miyamoto citing Yokoi as maybe a mentor type relationship between the two of them.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. And of course, the R&D team that Yokoi headed released several games. The most notable in the West, anyway, being Kid Icarus, Metroid, and Dr. Mario.
You may have heard of them. Just some little games
little
on the
games
Nintendo.
There. The Yokoi headed. And he was producer on all of those. I don't think he had any kind of directorial role on any of those, though.
Yeah. He also, in his never-ending quest to bring us weird toys, did Rob.
Yes, Rob was also a Yokoi joint. It was released in Japan as the family computer robot, but it wasn't released over there until after it had already been announced over here. Mm-hmm. It was very much designed for the U.S. release of the NES because they wanted to market the system as a entertainment product or toy, not as a video game, because we had just had that Western video game crash of '83.
Right, video games were dead.
Yeah,
and although you can see early prototypes of the system that were basically a computer.
Yeah, because they really wanted to pitch it as not a video game.
And so you could see them, dancing around it being a video game console as much as possible. And if you've not seen the early NES prototypes that are basically a home computer,
right,
they're very weird and angular looking. They're very like late 80s DeLorean looking
right
designs. They're very cool.
There's also one that kind of looks like an old Betamax player.
Oh, I've not seen that one.
It's weird. There's just some of them are very odd.
But finally, they were like, put a toy in it. Get the toy guy to make a toy and put a toy in it and call it a toy.
Pretty much. And Rob was popular with retailers and marketers. But there were reviews where early adopters of the console were like, oh, I love the robot. But he never really made much of an impact because there was only 2 Rob-compatible games, which was Gyromite and Stack Up was the name of the other one, I think.
Yeah.
And that was it. There was recently, like 4 or 5 years ago, a homebrew game released that works with Rob, and I think it just makes him dance to Christmas music or something.
Rob is, for people that have never used a Rob or seen a Rob in real life, it sucks. It's sucky.
It's just a slow motion robot. That's what it is.
It's one of those toys that you get and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you never do it again.
Right.
Because he's so fucking slow.
He's just really slow. And
it takes forever.
And not only is he slow, but he's a pain to set everything up, to get all the pieces in the right place.
Not only is he slow and a pain, but all he does is push buttons on an NES controller that you could easily just do with your feet while you play with your hands.
Hold on. Sometimes he just picks up little blocks and moves them around.
But the blocks are irrelevant. You can just push buttons.
It went between weird slow gimmick and weird slow sideshow. That was his entire use.
Sideshow Rob, as he was known.
So they discontinued Rob pretty early. It was after a year or two, and there was next to no fanfare when Rob was discontinued. They had the regular challenge set or action set or whatever they called the version without Rob already available before he was discontinued, and then they just stopped releasing the Rob version of the NES, and no one made a big stink about it. And it wasn't even seen as a failure, though, because a lot of people, and I saw this in like 4 different articles about Rob, they all separately referred to him as a successful Trojan horse of marketing. They really liked that phrase. But it's true.
I feel like Rob was only successful in getting retailers to stock the NES, because I think kids would have bought it anyway.
Right.
Because kids didn't stop wanting video games.
Right.
Because kids didn't want video games. They stopped wanting video games because the market fucked itself to death. That's what happened.
Yeah, it was because there was way too many shitty shovelware games all over the place. And I would say it wasn't just successful with the retailers. It was also successful with marketers.
Yes.
And for that matter, it was also successful with news reporters, because news reporters love talking about the stupid little robot.
So I don't know how much of the NES is, and now we're off on a tangent, but I don't know that I would attribute much of the NES's sales success to Rob.
Right.
I would attribute some of its marketing success to Rob.
Right. And I don't know if that many retailers would have carried the product to begin with if it weren't for Rob. True. So I would say it is successful in that regard, that we may not have seen an NES release without Rob.
Right.
But once it was in stores, I don't think that was the sales point.
I don't think it was either. And especially with, I feel like Mario was what sold the NES.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Once people saw Super Mario Brothers, that was it.
Rob got it on the shelf, but Mario sold it. Because here's the thing about releasing a shitty toy. And as a toy, Rob was shitty.
Yes.
I maintain that Rob... Now, was Rob cool? Mm-hmm. If you were like 7 and you got a Rob, would that be kick-ass?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
But Rob was a shitty toy.
Let me tell you something. I'm 38, and if I got a Rob, that would be kick-ass. I would love to have a Rob, but it's not useful.
It's not a good toy.
No.
Mario is a good toy. That's the thing that keeps kids glued to it so long that it becomes an institution.
Right.
Not Rob.
No.
Rob was just the trick.
Yeah,
to get it on the shelf.
That said, Rob has had a career since then. He has made cameo appearances in Star Tropics and F-Zero GX and WarioWare and Star Fox and Majora's Mask.
He's an
and
amiibo.
Mario Kart. He's got an amiibo. He's in Smash Brothers as a playable character. He's made the rounds. He's still around. He's not relevant, but he's still around.
He wasn't relevant when they released him, Saturn. You can just push the buttons. You don't need the Rob.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I actually found one media report about Rob's inclusion in Smash Brothers, and some of the Japanese players were like, "Oh, the Famicom robot." I don't think it ever actually came out, though. So I guess he had a different impact on Japan than he had.
Different trajectory there.
On the
they
US.
were already buying any their Famicoms because they had Nuts and Milk. What were you going to play Nuts and Milk on if you didn't have a Famicom?
You raise a good point.
You got Nuts and Milk and what's a Devil World. There you go.
Pretty much
buy
it.
you a Famicom.
And Clue Clue Land.
Clue Clue Land, yeah. And Mock Rider.
I actually like Mock Rider, damn it.
I like Devil World. I'm not knocking it. It's just one of the games is called Nuts and Milk, and I can't not make fun of it. Let's talk Game Boy.
Yeah, we did. We talked about Game Boy in episodes 13 and 160, so we're done.
Oh, let's move on then.
Yeah. Apparently he proposed the Game Boy to Yamauchi as well. He stated that he could create a reasonably priced handheld device with interchangeable games, and that was apparently enough. The Yamauchi was like, all right, well, do it.
Do it then. Yeah. I dare you. Do it.
And yeah, it was another example of his making something good out of mature technology. And
it's my new character, antagonistic Yamauchi. Well, do it then. All right, well, then go do it.
And then Miyamoto was standing on the guidelines just making fun of you and throwing more tasks on you.
Yeah, idiot. I've heard the same story that you attributed to the Game & Watch's development about the person playing with a calculator, attributed to the Game Boy's development. Which, when you take into account the fact that the Game & Watch existed,
for
the Game
10
Boy
years
story
at that
makes
point.
less sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I have heard that.
Yeah. And there was already color LCD of technology available by the time the Game Boy released. It's not that they couldn't make the Game Boy in color.
Right.
They just, and apparently there was some arguments within R&D1 about it. There were other developers that wanted it to be color. They wanted it to have a processor similar to the NES. And Yokoi insisted on it being small, light, durable, and affordable. And we got the Game Boy that we got.
There you go.
So, and then there was the Virtual Boy.
Oh, boy. The Virtual Boy.
Yeah. So the technology behind the Virtual Boy, I do
want to say this is the closest we're ever going to get to doing a Virtual Boy
Correct.
episode. For anybody.
Yeah. For anybody who is hopeful that someday we do a Virtual Boy episode, this is it. You get these.
Although
5 minutes.
Because the whole thing was I can't play a Virtual Boy the way it's meant to be played. I can play Virtual Boy on my Oculus, and it's actually pretty fun. It's a pretty good way to play Virtual Boy.
Except
for
your
headset.
You're not really getting the Virtual Boy experience there. You're getting emulated Virtual Boy.
When I'm doing it, every few minutes, I take it off and I shine a laser pointer directly into my corneas.
That's close.
Until I get a headache, and then I put it back on and keep playing.
Well, first of all, you should be doing it while holding a Batarang controller.
Oh yeah, and I glue it to a wire coat hanger and stand it on my table.
And every 5 minutes, you just take it off and spray hairspray in your eyes, and then you play some more.
The perfect Virtual Boy experience.
Right. So the actual technology behind the Virtual Boy, the shooting red lasers in your eyes, it was actually developed starting in 1985 by a company called Reflection Technology Inc. from Massachusetts. And they had pitched this concept, which they had called Private Eye. to several companies, including Mattel, Hasbro, and Sega, and all of them shot it down. I had seen a quote from Sega where they basically just called it trash technology that they didn't want anything to do with.
Right.
And they just kept showing it around, and finally they get to Nintendo, and Yokoi was in on the meeting when they were pitching it, and Yokoi was apparently very excited by it. And he thought that this was exactly the kind of technology that Nintendo needed that their competitors wouldn't be able to easily reproduce.
He was not wrong.
True. And apparently
nobody else reproduced it.
Right. Apparently he did not realize that it was already pitched to their competitors, and they did not want it.
Yes.
So Nintendo signed an exclusive agreement with this company, RTI, to develop a device based on this technology. And it was in development for 4 years before release. The development on the Virtual Boy started the year the Game Boy released.
Oh, man.
And the original Private Eye that was pitched to them actually featured head tracking technology. It was a standalone independent headset. But there was some liability fears because there were some lawsuits in Japan the year before the Virtual Boy released that got Nintendo very worried about liabilities, and they were also worried about the cost of production, and so they changed it into being a stationary goggle-based device.
Which you saw the same weird trajectory with, like the Power Glove, for example.
Yes.
The original device the Power Glove was based off of was tremendously powerful and impressive technology.
Right.
That they turned into a big hunk of shit,
yes.
Put it in a movie, and then made dumb kids want it, even though it sucked.
Right. Apparently, during development, they actually had color screens for the Virtual Boy. I found this quote from Yokoi in an interview. He says, "We experimented with a color LCD screen, but the users did not see depth. They just saw double. Color graphics give people the impression that a game is high-tech, but just because a game has a beautiful display does not mean that the game is fun to play. Red uses less battery, and red is easier to recognize. That is why red is used for traffic lights." Because when you're developing your video game, your first inspiration should be traffic lights.
I have to say, I do think, and this is a great example, because his whole lateral thinking of wizard technology philosophy is often cited as a great design choice.
Right.
And I think this is an instance where
it failed him.
It didn't work.
Right.
You know, and I think as much as we're here to celebrate Yokoi because he was a tremendously impressive man, it's also important to look at his failures and say, why did this fail? And I think the answer is he adhered too closely to his own philosophy and was inflexible with it. And kept trying to go back to that well so hard that it was he damaged what could have been a really cool device because of it.
Now, I don't actually attribute it entirely to him, and I'll get to that in a second. But first, in 1994, which was the year after the Virtual Boy released, I believe. The year before the Virtual Boy released. In 1994, Nintendo issued a statement to the press that they expected to sell 3 million Virtual Boys and 14 million Virtual Boy games by March of 95. The system didn't come out by March of 95.
So you're saying they didn't meet that?
They did not quite meet that projection.
Right then.
So according to several sources that I found, Yokoi was not happy with the Virtual Boy as it released. He had tried to shelve its release until it could be made more user-friendly and more power efficient. He
already made it red. How is he going to make it more power efficient?
Apparently, he wanted it to actually be mobile. He wanted it to fit on your head without the stand. He wanted the controls to be easier to figure out. He was not happy with what happened. However, he was overruled by Nintendo management because they wanted it to release prior to the N64 no matter what.
Right.
So it finally did release in Japan in July of 95, North America in August of 95. The device would be discontinued in 1996, less than a year later, after an estimated less than 800,000 units were sold.
Oh, that's rough.
Now, this a commonly shared early internet anecdote that I heard so many times back in the day, I thought this was real for years, and it is absolutely not, said that Yokoi was held responsible for the failure of the Virtual Boy and was forced to demonstrate the device at a trade show in the rain to try to show that he stood next to this device that he had designed. I can find no modern reputable source to back that up. I also found some sources. Well, I didn't find any sources, but I remember reading other anecdotes at the time that said that while walking home in the rain is when he died. That he was hit by a car after displaying the Virtual Boy. None of that is real.
Yeah, there are a lot of fabrications around this particular era of this and his death a little bit
unfortunately,
later.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, but yeah, you see this a lot. I've seen people say things. Yamauchi fired him because the Virtual Boy was bad. You see a lot of things like this.
Right.
There's
that are apocryphal.
As far as we can tell, no truth to that.
Right. Yeah, he actually did leave Nintendo in August of '96 after 31 years with the company. And again, a lot of people say the Virtual Boy is why he left, and I can see that it might have convinced him it was time to go.
Contributed.
But a lot of the people who worked directly under him and worked at R&D1 said he had been planning on leaving Nintendo when he turned 50, no matter what, but he stayed on late to supervise the creation of the Virtual Boy. Because he was the one who had faith in the product. And several of his staff from Nintendo left and formed this company, Koto Laboratory, who are still around today. It is still a company that designs little toys and games and stuff in Japan.
I did not know that. Now I want some.
They're not great. The first large project undertaken by Koto Labs was a commission from Bandai to help them develop a handheld console to compete with Nintendo's Game Boy line, and that would ultimately lead to the creation of the Wonder Swan, though Yokoi unfortunately wouldn't have survived to see the release of the Wonder Swan itself. A final game that Yokoi was working on the development for the Wonder Swan was a puzzle game that Bandai did release, and they called it Gunpei in his honor, and they have since ported it to several other systems.
And the Wonder Swan was an interesting device. I don't know that it even got a release outside of Japan.
No, it did not get a release outside of Japan.
But it was moderately successful in Japan. And it had some very interesting titles. It's a very interesting device.
It had strong support from Namco and SNK and from Squaresoft. You saw that was the first time that Square had remade Final Fantasies 1, 2, and 4 were on the Wonder Swan.
Yeah. It seems like, obviously it didn't release here. I don't know anybody that ever owned one, but it seems like it was a well-loved, if not massively, Game Boy massively successful device.
I often see it on par with the Neo Geo Pocket Color as far as level of success and quality of games, and that seems like a fair comparison.
I could see that, and maybe even kind of scope of its release.
Yeah, it was also a similar era too. They probably competed with one another for a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. Gunpei Yokoi did unfortunately die on October 4th, 1997, in a tragic car accident at the age of 56. I believe the story was that he had gotten out of his vehicle to check on something.
There was a car accident. He and the person driving the car got out of the car to check the damage. And unfortunately, there was another car accident where he was hit after he had gotten out of the vehicle.
Yeah, so absolutely tragic death there. Now, there are even more internet rumors about Yokoi. You'll see people online say that Hiroshi Yamauchi ordered a Yakuza hit on Gunpei Yokoi because of how bad the Virtual Boy was, or because he left and made a competitor device to the Game Boy. There's a lot of weird bullshit floating around out there. Again,
first of all, if Yamauchi was that upset, why would he have let it get that far that the Wonder Swan would have released?
Also, if Yamauchi was that upset, then why wouldn't he have fired him for the Virtual Boy?
Yeah.
It just, none of it makes sense. No. It's just bizarre internet rumors, and I understand that.
Now, I do believe that Yamauchi could have been involved with the Yakuza at some point. I believe that far.
That portion I might believe as well, yeah. But I think it's more just Yokoi was a very famous and influential person at Nintendo that most people in America didn't hear about till probably after his death. For many Americans, long after his death, So because of that, there's a lot of rumors that crop up because we didn't have context or even full histories for a long time.
And it didn't help that the Japanese police at the time, or the police in that prefecture in Japan anyway, weren't exactly forthcoming with details after the accident he was in for quite some time. And the internet loves to fill a void. So
it does.
When they did not have those details, they filled them in with their own, much more interesting details.
Yeah. Let's talk legacy. WiiWare title Grill Off with Ultra Hand was made available exclusively to Club Nintendo members and featured Yokoi's Ultra Hand toy as a central mechanic. I'll be honest, that's the first time I ever heard of the Ultra Hand.
I'm pretty sure that's the first time anyone outside of Japan ever heard of the Ultra Hand.
And I remember being like, what in the hell is an Ultra Hand? Several Game & Watch compilations have been released over the years, and Mr. Game & Watch from Super Smash Brothers is obviously based on the Game & Watch series.
Right.
They've released the Super Mario Brothers Game & Watch just last year.
That's true.
They've done multiple Club Nintendo exclusive Game & Watches.
Right.
They did Game Boy Color compilations of Game & Watch games.
Yep. And Game Boy Advance compilations.
Yeah, I mean, Game Boy Advance compilations. The Game Boy itself did pretty all right.
Yeah, it was okay.
You know, Virtual Boy did not.
Oh, right, yeah.
Bandai Namco has re-released the game Gunpei on a number of platforms, including PS1, DS, PSP, feature phones, iOS, Android, although none of them are still available for purchase. Because Bandai...
Yay.
Thanks, Bandai. In 2003, the GDC honored Yokoi with a posthumous Lifetime Achievement Award.
Right.
And yeah, he is, as much as a lot of internet discourse seems to want to be around the Virtual Boy and his death and whatever weird rumors they have between him and Yamauchi, he was tremendously influential, made some wildly successful things, games,
like the Love
toys,
Tester,
hardware, like the Love Tester, so you can hold girls' hands.
Finally.
And again, I firmly believe that his vision, his philosophy carries through Nintendo's DNA to today with the Switch that came out, and everyone was like, oh my God, this uses ancient NVIDIA hardware.
Right.
How the fuck is this going to run anything? Yet here it is running The Witcher 3 and it fits on a game card. I don't...
Right.
You know,
I mean, it wasn't that long ago that people were like, well, can it even compete with a PS4 or an Xbox One?
Yeah, and before that, they were saying that about the Wii.
Yep.
They said that about the DS. People said it about the Game Boy in the 90s.
Yep.
I remember people would be like, why would you get a Game Boy? The Game Gear's backlit in color.
Yeah, as soon as the Game Gear came out, every magazine was like, how can the Game Boy even compete anymore? And it turns out it's through quality. That's how.
Yes. I think Gunpei Yokoi, in addition to making wonderful devices, his philosophy is just so deep rooted into kind of not just what Nintendo produces, but kind of what we think of Nintendo being,
right?
In a lot of ways, which is this weird Japanese company that makes these weird, often underpowered devices out of weird tech that we've not seen before.
Right.
You know, because if you look at like again the Wii, not just being underpowered, using kind of dated motion control technology.
That's true.
I mean, when the Wii came out, people bitched the first day that the motion controls weren't very accurate and that they should have used better, higher quality tech that, of course, would have led to a higher price tag and longer development.
Which they later did use that better tech once the price came down.
Mm-hmm. So Gunpei Yokoi is just tremendously influential at Nintendo and the game industry at large.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like we're diminishing the Wonder Swan because it has its fans.
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic little piece of kit. I wish I had been able to get one. I was searching for a Wonder Swan Color or a Swan Crystal for many years, and I finally gave up that search because I still don't speak Japanese, and I could not play most of the games that I want to play on it.
I believe they're still relatively affordable or have become relatively affordable.
They have dropped in price a little bit. It started to turn around at one point. I haven't priced it in probably 10 years, but they did come down quite a bit from where they were. But I just, I don't know that I would ever actually sit down and play it. It's just a thing I wanted, but I don't know if it's a thing I'd use.
I want it too. Let's both get one.
Then we'll do an episode
group buy. Anyway, that's Gunpei Yokoi.
Yeah.
He's great.
Yes.
You should appreciate him.
Yes.
Just like we appreciate all of our patrons at patreon.com/retrowarriors.
That just happened.
They get awesome stuff like Talking Wizards, which is, man, that's a show, isn't it? How about that? Talking Wizards, everybody. We would also appreciate it if you rated and reviewed the show on whatever you can, anywhere.
We promise that we will still like you whether you do or not.
Whether you do or not, but we might like you a little bit more if you rate and review the show.
Hold on.
It would. We would appreciate it, and we would appreciate if you told a friend about the show.
Indeed.
It helps a lot. There are no algorithms that drive podcasts. I mean, there are maybe bigger ones, but there's no algorithm here. It's just me and Saturn and Guy, and that's it.
And our Discord community.
And our wonderful Discord community that you can join with a link in the description. But we do want to thank the following specific patrons for making this episode possible, starting with Sphincter Says What?
What? And Chris Minochi.
Chuck Angeline.
David Martin.
Hi, Ross.
Jurgen.
Matt Kovacs.
Mike Morse.
Rob Powers.
And STG the Mr. Guy.
They're all the patrons we want to thank for making this show possible. We would appreciate your support if you would consider it. That would be great. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking in a weird sing-songy voice.
Me
I think it's
either.
because it's late and I'm tired.
You're going insane.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.